It started with what Melissa called a pre-birthday getaway. She framed it as something simple, just a quiet weekend at a cozy lakeside resort upstate, the kind of place with cabin-style lodges, fire pits, and trails winding through pines and maples. I was working long hours that month, juggling deadlines at the plant and meetings with new vendors, so a weekend to unwind sounded like a good idea. I figured, why not? The plan was for the three of us, me, Melissa, and her best friend Claire, to drive up Friday morning and come back Sunday night. Claire had been part of Melissa's life since college. They were roommates back then and, from what I gathered, practically inseparable. Even after Melissa and I got married, Claire remained a fixture. She'd pop over for movie nights, join us for dinners, sometimes even tag along on holiday weekends. It got to the point where if I said, "Let's do something," Melissa would answer, "Let me check with Claire." I never made a fuss about it, though I can't say it didn't get under my skin sometimes. I always tried to tell myself it was harmless. Melissa had a tight circle of friends and Claire was just one of those people who liked to be involved. Still, there were little things. Sometimes I'd catch them sharing looks or laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Once, at a barbecue, I walked up behind them and they stopped talking real quick. When I asked what was funny, Melissa brushed it off, just girl stuff. I let it go. That was kind of the rhythm of our marriage. I let things go. Maybe too often. Anyway, about the trip. Melissa booked a cabin with 2 bedrooms and a shared living space, log walls, stone fireplace, rustic furniture that smelled like cedar. It was pretty enough, and the resort had decent reviews. A lake out front, canoes tied up along the dock, and some of those big wooden rocking chairs lined up on a wraparound porch. There was even a clubhouse on the hill that offered drinks and entertainment on weekends. We pulled in that Friday just past noon, the weather crisp and bright, blue sky stretching wide over the trees like a quilt laid flat. The moment we arrived, Claire was in full vacation mode, laughing, sunglasses on, throwing her bags onto the nearest couch like she owned the place. Melissa was beaming too, spinning around with her arms out like she was in a movie. I remember watching them clink their seltzer cans together on the porch and feeling like an extra in a scene I didn't quite understand. That first afternoon we mostly lounged around. Melissa and Claire spent hours flipping through magazines, taking selfies, and planning outfits for something special on Saturday night. They called it a surprise, kept talking in code. I didn't pry. I figured they'd planned a spa night or something. Melissa kept saying it was her big treat, before turning the big 3-0 next month. That night we grilled burgers, had a couple beers, and turned in early. They stayed up talking in Claire's room long after I'd gone to bed. I could hear the low murmur of their voices through the wall, then sudden burst of laughter. Again, I let it go. The next morning, Melissa woke me up with coffee and a smile. "Big day ahead," she said, nudging my shoulder. She and Claire were dressed already, makeup done, hair curled, both of them in matching flannel shirts over black leggings, like they'd coordinated. "We're heading to the clubhouse later," Melissa told me. "It's girls only tonight. Just a fun little thing the resort puts on. You don't mind, right?" I did mind, a little. Not because I needed to be included in whatever they were doing, but because it felt odd. Like I was a background prop on a trip that was supposed to be ours. Still, I just smiled and said, "Sure, sounds good. I'll hang back, maybe watch the game or take a walk." Melissa kissed my cheek. Claire winked like we were in on some joke together, and then they disappeared into their room, laughing all the way down the hall. I stood there in the cabin, coffee cooling in my hand, wondering what exactly I'd signed up for that weekend. Something wasn't sitting right. But I pushed the thought down and looked out at the lake, trying to enjoy the view. After all, it was supposed to be a getaway. Just a quiet little trip. That's what I told myself. At the time, I had no idea just how far off I was. Something felt off right from the start. After dinner that first night, some grilled chicken and potato salad Claire whipped up while Melissa poured us all red wine like she was playing hostess at a vineyard. They started getting ready for that girls-only event at the clubhouse. Melissa disappeared into the bathroom first with a curling iron and half her makeup bag, and Claire followed soon after with her loud music and that bottle of fruity body spray she always overused. I stayed in the living room, sipping a second beer and watching some old Western on the small TV. But I couldn't concentrate. Their laughter kept bubbling out from behind the door, and every now and then I'd catch a snippet of something that didn't sit right. "Do you think he'll notice?" Claire had asked at one point. Melissa's reply was muffled, but they both howled like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. When they finally stepped out, it took everything I had not to say something. Claire wore a short, tight red dress that looked more nightclub than cabin lodge, paired with heels that clicked on the hardwood like she was auditioning for attention. Melissa, my wife, wore black, something sheer with a plunging neckline, and she smelled like that heavy perfume she usually only wore for anniversaries. Their hair was done up, jewelry shining, and their eyes sparkled like they were heading into battle. "Wish us luck," Claire said, striking a silly pose. "Be good," Melissa added, winking. I forced a smile, nodded. "Have fun," I said, my voice catching slightly. The door clicked shut behind them. I waited a minute, then another. Something in my chest told me not to stay put. It wasn't just jealousy or nerves. It was like my gut had turned to stone. I grabbed my jacket, slipped on my boots, and headed out. The night air was crisp, cooler than I expected, and I could see my breath. The path to the clubhouse was dimly lit by hanging lanterns on wooden posts. I kept my distance, watching their silhouettes as they moved ahead, laughing and bumping shoulders like schoolgirls on a field trip. From the edge of the trees, I saw them approach the clubhouse and show something to the man at the door, maybe a ticket, maybe nothing at all. He waved them in. I waited a few minutes, then crept closer. The place wasn't what I expected. It looked like a hunting lodge from the outside, but inside it was glowing with neon light and throbbing music. I could hear it pulsing through the ground. There were no signs or notices, just two big wooden doors and a few small windows. I found one near the side that was cracked open, just enough to let some sound out, and just enough for me to see. What I saw through that window took the wind out of me. It was a party, sure, but not the kind you find listed on the resort brochure. The music was loud, the air inside was hazy, and people were dancing like there were no rules. Some folks wore masks. Others wore outfits that belonged more in a Vegas club than a mountain resort. And in the middle of it all, laughing, twirling, arms raised, were Melissa and Claire. They weren't on the sidelines either. They were the center of it. Melissa had ditched her jacket and was spinning in time with a man in a leather vest, someone I'd never seen before. Claire was pressed close to another guy, her hands tracing patterns on his shoulders. Both of them were flushed, laughing like this was the best night of their lives. I couldn't move. I fumbled with my phone, hands shaking, and started recording. I didn't know what I was doing, exactly. Maybe I just needed proof that what I saw was real. Maybe I thought, if I had it on video, I could play it back later and make sense of it. I zoomed in. There was Melissa, my wife, tilting her head back, accepting a drink from a stranger's hand, her lips brushing the rim of the glass he'd just sipped. Claire danced behind her, close enough they could have been one person. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. Every part of me screamed to march through the door and drag Melissa out by the arm. But something kept me planted. Maybe it was disbelief. Maybe it was the cold logic settling in. This wasn't just fun. This wasn't innocent. I watched for a few more minutes, recorded what I could, then backed away from the window, step by careful step. The night air had gone colder. The stars above looked like strangers. My hand clenched the phone so tightly it left an imprint in my skin. I headed back to the cabin, eyes straight ahead, throat tight. The world felt different now. The kind of different you don't come back from. I didn't say a word that night. When I got back to the cabin, the place was still quiet. Their room door was shut, the beds untouched. I sat down on the edge of the couch, phone still clutched tight in my hand. I didn't even take off my boots. Just sat there staring at nothing, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. I must have sat that way for hours, not moving, thinking of everything and nothing all at once. The way she looked when she danced. The sound of Claire's laughter echoing inside that lodge. The way I had to record it all because otherwise no one would believe me. Hell, even I barely believed it, and I'd seen it with my own two eyes. By the time dawn started breaking through the trees, casting that early blue light across the wooden floor, I'd made up my mind. There wasn't going to be a fight. No yelling, no door slamming, no drawn-out arguments full of tears and denial. I was done playing the fool. I didn't need her to tell me what it was or what it wasn't. I already knew. So I packed. Not in a rush, either. I moved real slow, careful not to make a sound. I folded my shirts, tucked my jeans into the side pockets of the duffel, zipped my toiletries into that old shaving kit Melissa got me our first Christmas together. I even paused at one point and looked around the cabin like I was trying to memorize it. Not because it mattered, but because it didn't. I wanted to remember how I felt in that moment. Tired, clear-headed, and more alone than I'd ever been. Even with two people just down the hall. I took the long way out, circling past the main road instead of cutting by the clubhouse. The morning air was damp and cool, birds just starting to stir. The gravel crunched under my boots in a way that felt final, like each step was sealing something shut behind me. My truck was parked by the trees, tucked into the shade. I climbed in, fired up the engine, and rolled down the window. Took one last look toward the cabin. Then I left. I didn't go home, not yet. I didn't even know where home was supposed to be anymore. I just drove for a while, no radio, no GPS, letting the road decide for me. There's something about driving through empty backroads when your head's a mess. The hum of the tires, the wind against the side mirrors, it helps. It doesn't fix anything, but it helps. By the time I got somewhere with signal, the first message had come in. Melissa, 6:02 a.m. Hey babe, where'd you go? I stared at it for a long minute before locking the phone and tossing it into the passenger seat. More came in as the morning wore on. First it was playful, casual. Melissa, 6:20 a.m. sleeping in without us. Melissa, 6:37 a.m. we brought breakfast. Come eat, smiley face. Then came the shift. Melissa, 7:12 a.m. Jack, where are you? Melissa, 7:45 a.m. seriously, answer your phone. Melissa, 8:18 a.m. this isn't funny. It was around 9 a.m. when she started calling. First once, then again, then 5 more times in the span of 20 minutes. I let each one ring out. Watching her name flash on the screen stirred something in me, but not enough to make me answer. I was past the point of wanting an explanation. I didn't need to hear her voice full of fake confusion or carefully chosen words. I wanted silence. And I took it. Around noon, Claire tried calling too. I stared at her name like it was a word I didn't recognize. Clare, Melissa's best friend. The woman I'd shared 100 meals with. The woman who once helped us paint our kitchen and now, well, now I didn't even know what to call her. Their messages kept coming into the afternoon. I switched the phone to airplane mode. Somewhere outside a small diner off Route 27, I pulled over, ate a sandwich, drank weak coffee, watched locals come and go like nothing had changed. For them, it hadn't. For me, everything had. Back at the resort, I imagine it didn't take long for panic to set in. She probably checked the lake trail first, maybe even called the front desk. I could picture her knocking on cabin doors, breath quick, voice high. Have you seen my husband? She'd ask, eyes wide with that special kind of fear that only shows up when you realize someone you took for granted might be gone. But I didn't answer. That entire day, I stayed quiet. Off the grid. No texts, no posts, no locations shared. Just me, the open road, and a little black notebook I kept in the glove box, the one where I started writing down what I saw, what I felt. It helped put things in order. Melissa didn't know it yet, but everything had already changed. I didn't disappear to hurt her. I disappeared to find myself again. And maybe to remind her that silence, when it finally comes, can say more than any word ever could. I rolled back into town just before sunset 2 days after leaving the resort. I'd spent those hours mostly on the road, stopping in little towns to clear my head and make a plan. When I pulled into our neighborhood, it felt like coming back to a house that wasn't mine anymore. Not really. Something had shifted. The grass out front was still freshly mowed. The bird bath Melissa liked was still sitting near the walkway, half filled from last week's rain. The wind chimes on the porch danced in the breeze like nothing had changed. But everything had. At least for me. I parked a few blocks away, walked the rest of the way in. No point in drawing attention from neighbors. Didn't need any friendly waves or awkward welcome backs. I let myself into the house, walked through the door like I was sneaking into a memory. The place smelled like lavender and furniture polish, that same scent Melissa liked to use on Saturdays. It hit me right in the gut, but I didn't stay long. I was a man on a mission now. First stop Monday morning, a law office off Main, tucked between a florist and a tax prep place. Clean-cut place, with wood-paneled walls and a quiet front desk girl who offered me coffee and didn't ask questions. The sign on the door said Carter and Lowe, Family Law. I met with Mr. Carter himself. Gray hair, sharp eyes, a handshake like he knew exactly how many of these conversations he'd had in his life. He didn't waste time. Asked me to walk him through what happened. So I did. I laid it all out. Every detail from the trip, the resort, the party. Then I showed him the footage on my phone. His eyes didn't blink once through the whole video. When it ended, he sat back and said, "You've got a solid case." He didn't sugarcoat things. Said I'd handled it smart. Said the footage, while not graphic, was compelling. Told me that judges look at behavior, context, intent, and I had all three. He asked about the house, finances, accounts. That's when I told him I wanted it done quick and clean. No room for dragging it out. So I got to work. First, I went to the bank. Melissa and I had one shared checking account, one shared savings. I'd already moved most of my paycheck deposits to a separate account months ago. But now I froze the joint ones. Left just enough for bills, groceries, gas. Didn't want her accusing me of being cruel. Just made it clear the leash had been cut. Next, I called the property manager. We've been renting that little 2-bedroom for 3 years, month to month after the first lease expired. I told them I was terminating. Gave them the required notice. Told them Melissa would be handling the move out herself. That part felt cold, but necessary. After that, I packed. Quietly. Systematically. Like I was closing up a work site. Took only what was mine: clothes, tools, books, personal stuff. Left the furniture, the dishes, even the damn coffee maker she loved more than me some mornings. I didn't want a single thing tying me to that house. It wasn't home anymore. Before I walked out for the last time, I stood in the middle of the living room. The late afternoon sun came in through the blinds, making lines across the hardwood. It used to be a place of comfort, of laughter. Now it just felt like a waiting room in a courthouse, sterile and hollow. I wrote one note. Just a folded piece of paper, nothing fancy. No long explanation, no list of grievances. Just 6 words in black ink. You'll know why soon enough. I placed it on the kitchen counter, right next to the basket where she kept our mail and shopping lists. I knew she'd find it. I wanted her to. Then I turned the key in the lock and walked away. It's funny what you think about in moments like that. I didn't think about the wedding or the holidays or the pictures on the fridge. I thought about the time I fixed that leaky faucet and she made me a grilled cheese and said I was her hero. Just a tiny thing. But now it felt like someone else's life. By the time Melissa came back from the resort, the house was nearly empty and my number was no longer reachable. She would open that door expecting normalcy and find absence instead. I didn't do it to hurt her. I did it because I'd finally reached the point where peace meant more than pretending. Let her have her confusion. Let her wonder. The storm had only just begun, but I was already miles ahead. She came home 3 days later. I don't know what she expected to find. Maybe the scent of dinner on the stove, maybe the low hum of the ceiling fan spinning above the couch, or maybe just me sitting at the table like nothing had changed, waiting to talk it all out. Melissa had always liked to believe things could be smoothed over, like life was just one long sitcom with a heartfelt apology at the end of every episode. But that day, when she opened the front door and stepped inside, she didn't find me. She didn't find anything. The house was empty. No couch. No TV. No kitchen table with a dent in the corner from when I dropped my toolbox. No framed pictures on the mantel. No books on the shelf. Not even the coat rack by the door. It was all gone. Every drawer she pulled open? Empty. Every closet? Cleared out. All that remained were her things, some clothes in the bedroom, her bathroom junk spread across the sink like usual, and a few of her shoes piled by the door. The only sign of my existence was a small folded note sitting on the kitchen counter. 5 words. You'll know why soon enough. I'd imagined that moment more times than I care to admit. I could see her walking in, brow furrowing as she scanned the room, calling out my name like maybe I was just in the garage or the backyard or halfway through some project. And then, slowly, reality would settle in. She'd pick up that note, read it once, then again. And then the panic would hit. I didn't hear it, obviously. I wasn't there to see it. But I felt it. The first call came that afternoon. My phone lit up with her name. I watched it ring. Then again. And again. She didn't leave a voicemail. Not at first. Just kept calling, over and over, like maybe if she dialed enough times, it would undo the silence. When I blocked her number, I did it without hesitation. It wasn't about punishment. It was about peace. I didn't want to hear her voice begging or lying or crying. I'd heard enough at that point. I didn't need more noise. Later that night, she switched to email. The first one had no subject line. Just a frantic, rambling string of questions. Where are you? What's going on? Why would you do this? Please just talk to me. I didn't reply. The second email came an hour later. Longer. Angrier. You can't just leave like this. This isn't fair. You owe me a conversation. That's what she didn't get. I didn't owe her anything. She made her choices. She danced under neon lights while I stood outside in the cold. She laughed with her best friend while I sat alone with a phone full of proof. She didn't owe me honesty, and I no longer owed her comfort. I imagined her pacing the house, opening and closing cabinets like maybe I'd left something behind. Maybe I'd hidden a message. Maybe I'd come walking through the door any minute now with some explanation, with arms wide and forgiveness in hand. But all she had was a house with echoes. She'd try Claire next, I figured. Maybe she already had. Maybe they sat in that empty living room with 2 bottles of wine and a half-baked story about misunderstanding and regret. Maybe Melissa cried. Maybe Claire blamed me. Didn't matter. They could spin it however they liked. I wasn't there to listen. It was strange, in a way, how something once so full, so noisy, so lived in, could turn silent overnight. That house had seen birthday candles, movie nights, arguments over what color to paint the hallway, Sunday mornings in pajamas, Christmas trees that leaned a little too far to the left. All of it vanished now, like we were never there. I thought about the walls. What stories would they keep? Would the new tenants hear whispers of our laughter, or just the emptiness we left behind? She tried to reach out through mutual friends. Jason texted me, saying Melissa was trying to get in touch. Said she was worried, confused, wanted answers. I told him to stay out of it. Told him I was fine. Told him it was personal and that I didn't want company or questions. He respected that. Good man, Jason. Always kept his nose out of where it didn't belong. That first week was quiet, and not in a peaceful way. The kind of quiet that hums in your chest like a warning. But it passed. And the call stopped. And the email stopped. And I started to breathe again. I didn't hate her. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted the noise to stop. I wanted to reclaim something she'd taken, my sense of stillness, my sense of being enough. And sometimes, to do that, you have to walk away. You have to let them come home to nothing. Because sometimes, nothing is the loudest truth there is. 2 weeks passed. 14 days of complete silence between us. No texts. No calls. No emails. Not even a smoke signal from a mutual friend trying to smooth things over. It was like the whole mess had frozen in time, waiting for something to tip it back into motion. I knew it couldn't last. Not after the way I left. Not after the note. So I made sure the next move was mine, and that it would be final. That's when I called Mr. Carter again. Let's get the paperwork filed, I told him. I wanted delivered directly to her. No email. No nonsense. I wanted official. He didn't ask why. He just said, I'll have it ready by Thursday. We met 2 days later. His office was cooler than usual, the kind of cold that settles into your hands when you're signing life-changing documents. The receptionist gave me a polite nod, like she knew what was coming but didn't want to make eye contact. That was fine. I wasn't there for small talk. The folder was thick, clean legal formatting, lots of pages that said in long, professional terms what I could have said in one sentence. I'm done. Mr. Carter walked me through every section. First, the filing itself, divorce based on irreconcilable differences, with an asterisk for infidelity. He said it plain, like it was just another day. But hearing that word hit different. It sounded clinical coming from him. Cold, but clean. Then came the financial section. Every account, every dollar, every piece of property we'd once shared was broken down like inventory on a warehouse checklist. Bank account? Already frozen. Credit cards? Canceled, with notices filed. Lease? Terminated, with my name officially removed. My retirement fund? Fully separated under state law, protected. Her car? In her name. Let her keep it. I wasn't taking anything that wasn't mine. I didn't want revenge through paperwork. I just wanted out. Clean lines. Sharp edges. No loopholes. The last page was a statement. One paragraph, plain English, no legal fluff. It explained the reason for the divorce. Breakdown of marital relationship due to documented infidelity. Mr. Carter raised an eyebrow when he read it back to me. You sure you want to include that? He asked. You don't have to. It'll go on record. I nodded. I'm sure. We finalized everything that afternoon. I signed each page with a pen that felt heavier than it was. My name, her name, are written in black ink on white paper. It felt like signing a contract with the past. Then came the final step, delivery. I didn't want to send it by mail. I didn't want it sitting in her mailbox or getting lost in a pile of coupons and bills. I wanted it in her hands. Direct. So we hired a courier. Not some sketchy kid on a bike, either. A professional. Someone who'd knock on her door, look her in the eye, and hand her the future she never saw coming. I pictured the scene in my head. It's mid-morning. Maybe she's in the kitchen, still in her robe, pouring coffee into one of those mugs with a corny quote about love. She hears the knock. Probably thinks it's a neighbor, or maybe Claire with a grocery bag and a guilty smile. She opens the door, and it's a man in a clean button-down shirt holding a tin envelope with her name on it. "This is for you," he says. No emotion. Just business. She takes it, confused. Maybe says thanks. Maybe doesn't. And then the door shuts. And the world shifts. Inside that envelope is the truth in paper form. The lines she crossed, the promises she broke, the silence that followed. The ledger of our life together, measured out in balances, signatures, and a clean exit strategy. The moment she opens it, everything comes undone. I wasn't there to see her face, but I can imagine. She reads the headline, "Dissolution of Marriage." She schemes the financials, sees the frozen accounts, the closed credit lines, the terminated lease. She flips to the back, finds the statement. Her eyes land on that word, infidelity, and suddenly she realizes, this isn't a fight. This isn't a timeout. This is the end. A real end. Later that night, I checked my email. There was a single message from her, just the subject line. "You didn't even give me a chance." I didn't open it. I didn't need to, because she had her chance. Every day, every minute, every time I looked her in the eye and trusted her. The delivery wasn't just paperwork. It was closure with a postage stamp. It was the sound of the last door closing between us. No more waiting. No more wondering. Just silence. And a clean break. 5 months. That's how long it took from the day she got those papers to the morning we stepped into the courthouse. 5 months of silence, paperwork, emails between attorneys, and the occasional message from mutual friends trying to play peacemaker. I didn't reply to any of it. What was there to say? The courthouse sat just off Main Street. Same brick building that's been there since I was a kid. I remember riding past it on my bike in the summers, thinking it looked too serious for anything good to happen inside. Turns out, I wasn't far off. I got there early, dressed in my best shirt, clean shave, quiet steps. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. The air was heavy, sky gray, a breeze rolling in from the east that smelled like cut grass and asphalt. It was the kind of morning where even the birds seemed to stay quiet. Inside, the courtroom was cold. Everything about it said finality. Wooden benches, polished floors, a judge's bench that stood higher than anything else in the room. I sat near the back at first, then moved up when my name was called. My lawyer, Mr. Carter, gave me a nod. "Today's the last mile," he said. And then she walked in. Melissa. She looked smaller somehow. Not in size, but in presence. She wore a plain black dress, no makeup except the smudges under her eyes, like she'd been crying on the way over. Her hands were shaking slightly as she clutched her folder. I saw her scan the room, looking for me. Our eyes met for a second, then she looked down. When the case was called, we stood. The judge was a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses and a tired voice that said he'd seen it all before. He asked us to confirm our identities, then opened the folder in front of him. Pages of documents, statements, financial breakdowns, and at the top, a USB drive. The video. Mr. Carter had submitted it early on. We never played it in full during the hearing. We didn't need to. The judge had reviewed it in chambers. That alone carried more weight than any testimony she could offer. Melissa's lawyer went first. He painted her as emotional, misguided, overwhelmed. He said the resort party was out of character, that she'd been confused, that substances had possibly impaired judgment. I could see Melissa nodding beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When it was her turn to speak, she took the stand and tried to steady her voice. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said. Her voice cracked halfway through. "It was just a party. I didn't think. I didn't know it would cost me everything." She kept her eyes on the judge, not on me. She said she didn't remember most of it, that she regretted her actions, that she hadn't understood the impact. "It was just a mistake," she said. "I thought we were okay. I thought he'd forgive me." Mr. Carter stood when it was our turn. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. He simply laid out the facts. That I had video evidence of the behavior. That I had removed myself from the situation to avoid conflict. That I had followed every legal step, protected my finances without aggression, and sought a peaceful end. "The breakdown in this marriage," he said, "did not begin with silence. It began with betrayal." The judge didn't ask for much more. He shuffled through the papers again, nodded to both attorneys, and then looked at us. "This court finds the claims supported," he said flatly. "The respondent's behavior, documented and unchallenged in evidence, is inconsistent with the obligations of marriage." He turned to Melissa. "There are no second chances here," he said. "This isn't about what you feel now. It's about what you chose to do then." He granted the divorce. Final and binding. Melissa didn't cry out loud. She just sat there, lips trembling, eyes locked on some point beyond the wall. Her hands folded in her lap like she was holding on to something invisible. Maybe the past. Maybe the future she thought she could talk her way back into. I didn't gloat. Didn't smirk. Didn't say a word. Because the truth is, that courtroom wasn't a victory lap. It was a gravestone. For what we had, for what could have been, for all the little things we used to share before she threw it away in the flicker of club lights and cheap thrills. I walked out alone, same as I came in. The sky was clearing now. The breeze still cool, but the clouds had started to part. I stood on the steps for a moment, breathing in deep. It was over. It was maybe 3 months after the court finalized everything when Claire reached out. Her name popped up in my inbox like a ghost from a chapter I'd thought was already shut tight. At first, I didn't even open the message. I just stared at it, hand hovering over the mouse, wondering what in the world she could possibly want. I waited a whole day before reading it. It wasn't long, just a few lines. She said she hoped I was doing okay, that she understood if I never wanted to hear from her again. But if I was willing, she'd like to talk. No expectations, she wrote. Just conversation. I read it twice before closing the laptop. My first reaction was anger. Pure and simple. Claire had been there that night. Not just a bystander, she'd been part of it. The laughing, the drinks, the way she and Melissa acted like I was a prop in the background of their lives. But then again, that anger had long cooled into something else. Not quite forgiveness, but a sort of distant numbness. Like looking at a burned-out house and feeling nothing but the wind moving through the ruins. Still, curiosity got the better of me. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, the kind with brick walls and worn-out chairs, the smell of espresso baked into the paint. I got there early, not sure if I'd actually stay. But then she walked in quiet, head low, no makeup, wearing an old gray sweater that hung off her shoulders like it belonged to someone else. She looked tired. Older than I remembered. Real. "Hi, Jack," she said, almost too soft to hear. "Claire." We sat in a corner booth near the window. Ordered coffee. Sat there in awkward silence for what felt like a mile of time. Finally, she spoke. "I've thought about reaching out 100 times," she said. "But I didn't think you'd respond. Still surprised you did." I didn't say much at first. Just let her talk. She apologized. Not in some rehearsed way. Not defensive, not overly dramatic. She said she hadn't expected that weekend to spiral the way it did. Said it wasn't planned. Said she knew it didn't matter anymore, but she wanted me to hear it anyway. And maybe that's why I listened. Because it didn't sound like someone trying to justify themselves. It sounded like someone dragging a stone behind them and finally setting it down. We talked for an hour. Then another. Nothing big at first, just catching up, filling in the blanks. She'd left the resort the same day I did, just later. Said things with Melissa hadn't been the same since. That they'd stopped talking not long after the divorce. That she'd been doing a lot of thinking. A week later, we had lunch. A few days after that, we took a walk by the lake. And slowly, real slow, we kept meeting. It wasn't a romance, not at first. It wasn't anything except two people who'd been burned by the same fire, trying to figure out if they could sit near each other without getting hurt again. But something shifted. There was a comfort in how honest she became. She didn't flinch from the past, didn't pretend it didn't happen. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't carrying everything by myself. One night, we sat on a park bench, her hands tucked into her coat sleeves, breath curling in the cold air, and she looked at me and said, "I know you don't owe me anything, but I'm here. If you want something different." I didn't answer her that night, but I kept showing up. And Melissa found out. I don't know how. Maybe someone saw us downtown. Maybe Claire told her. Doesn't matter. One morning I got a text from an unknown number. "Now I know how it feels." That was all it said. I deleted it. Because the truth is, what happened with Claire wasn't about revenge. I didn't do it to even the score or make Melissa hurt. If anything, I would have preferred she never found out. This wasn't payback. It was something simpler. Quieter. It was moving forward. Turning the page, like setting down a book you'd read too many times and picking up one you weren't sure you'd like, but willing to try anyway. I don't know where it'll go with Claire. We're not making promises. Just taking steps. I still have days where the past creeps in like fog. But then she'll say something small, something kind, something human, and I remember what it feels like to just be seen again. And for the first time in a long time, that's enough. Share your thoughts in the comments. What role did silence play in this story? Was it healing, punishing, or both? If you liked the story, Subscribe to the channel and give us a like.